In one single word, advanced paramotoring is refinement. Last year I was flying on the beach and I had something happen. I was cruising along the beach at a nice steady state, smooth speed, about 30 feet off the ground, and I needed to climb over an obstacle. I think it was a pier, it may have been a jetty, I'm not really 100% certain what the obstacle was. So I added power. I was configured with the wing trimmed out, and I was using the wingtip steering inputs on my Colorado. And when I came back off the power to descend back down once I'd cleared that obstacle, full power was not enough to effectively arrest my descent rate, and I almost collided with the beach. Unfortunately, this happened to one of our local flyers here. He, last night, hedge-hopped. Was cruising along low, went up and over a section of trees and shrubs, and when he let off the power to come back down, he did not have the throttle authority to overcome his sink rate and plowed into the ground. Fortunately, he was not injured. This is not something that a beginner pilot is going to succumb to. This is an intermediate to an advanced problem. First of all, the wing that enables him to cruise low like that with the trims out and is equipped with the wingtip steering system isn't typically something a beginning pilot's going to be flying anyways. Well, in my buddy's case, we hadn't had any smooth weather in such a long time. He was lulled into a sense of complacency by the smooth air, the dome of cold, high-pressure winds that had taken over Central Florida, and for the first time in a long time, weather conditions were perfect. So he was flying around with very little brake pressure and decided to stow the brakes when he hedge hopped and couldn't control his descent on the other side of the hedge. You know, hedge hopping is not something new. It was invented by World War I pilots. It was a technique to get down low into fields where nobody could get a bead on them and start shooting. And as they approached the tree lines or the hedge lines, they'd just ease back on the stick, climb up over the trees, and then settle back down on the other side. But they did it with pitch. They did it with elevator inputs. And if we're going to do that sort of thing, we should be doing it with brakes, not with power alone. Some of the performance issues involved have to do with the fact that at cruise speed, you're cruising along at 70% power, especially if you're on a highly loaded wing because you're stepped down a few sizes in wing. So you've only got a reserve of 30% of the available thrust left. So if you're cruising at level flight, you pop up a little bit, and you let off the throttle, you've gone from 80% throttle to 0% throttle. When you come back to 80%, you're going to be in a level flight configuration at best, and that reserved 20% extra power is not going to be enough to arrest your descent rate without some brake addition. I'd like to encourage you to put it out of your mind that a certain number of hours or a number of takeoffs somehow magically protects you from the exposures. The exposures actually grow as you become more proficient, fly more difficult to manage equipment with more capabilities. The risks are ever present and more immediate. If you buy into the fact that an intermediate advanced pilot could make that mistake, I think you'll enjoy this series as it progresses. You likely knew that this was inevitable. A section on advanced paramotoring. You're probably thinking acro, right? No, I want to define advanced aviating, whether it's paramotoring or helicopter or flying a hot air balloon or a glider. It's all about precision. It's about getting the results that you most intend. That's advanced paramotoring. Advanced paramotoring is precision throttle control, is exact altitude attainment, is landing exactly where you want to. It's making an estimate of how long it's going to take you to get airborne and being reasonably within 5 or 6 feet of that total distance when it actually happens. It's the difference between making 95% of your launch attempts and making 99% of your launch attempts. Well, I'm not going to go it alone either. I'm going to enlist the help of some very well-known people. You know who they are if you paramotor often. If you've attended any East Coast events, you certainly know who they are.
Well, I spent the day talking with Lauren Michaels, who runs Four Winds PPG school down here in Florida at Avon. And we talked about a lot of things, about the future of paramotor training. And it's my opinion that the future of paramotor training involves a heck of a lot more continual training than 1 week initial course type training where you go get trained and then you never talk about proficiency, never talk about improving your skills, never subject yourself to additional refinement of your paramotoring. And these guys that do this all the time, the guys that are good, the guys that are winning competitions, the guys that are pretty galvanized against ever having an accident or a problem, are guys like Lauren. He just spent the better part of a week in Spain ground handling. Now this is a guy that is extremely proficient. He spent a week ground handling with Theo DeBlick just to make sure that everything that he does is dialed in.
Like primary instruction, where I would almost insist that you work with a curriculum, this is kind of a new realm that I would like to encourage instructors that sell training to consider. And that is working without a curriculum and basing what they're teaching, how they're helping the student based on the student's skill level, the student's failings, and minor suggestions. And that really can't be done with a curriculum. It requires some hands-on input from the instructor to observe, maybe video, maybe fly with the prospective student.
Yeah, self-training. If you're watching this video, you know that I trained myself or learned how to fly a paraglider without direct hands-on instruction, but I never stopped learning. And this is partially to illustrate the fact that I haven't stopped learning. I'm not planning on stopping learning. I have some specific things I want him to observe me doing and get his feedback on. Spot landings is one. Takeoffs, landings, ground handling, ground safety, and deeper and steeper. So one of my biggest goals in my time with Lauren is to get comfortable with being in an attitude not necessary for normal flight.
So in my preliminary discussions with both Lauren Michaels and the fine folks at One Up Adventures, we've talked about specific goals for me, and they may include a lot of things. They may include some acting, they may include spirals and auto rotations and maybe even stalls and spins. But for the most part, it's going to be determined by how they see I'm currently flying and where I need to make improvements. What should this cost you? I don't know. What do you think their time is worth? They spend an evening with you instead of their family. They're out there exposing themselves to reputational risk and the danger of you flying near them or with them. They've got bills to pay. I don't know, $100 an hour minimum, maybe $150 a session. I think those are fair starting prices, and they may even go up from there. Now, we're not talking about a full-on SIV course. We're not talking about a tremendously large amount of classroom time. But I think those are fair starting point numbers, and you can probably negotiate with your instructor from there as to what's the fair way to compensate these folks. Don't expect them to do this for nothing. If you want to do this for nothing, do it with your local flying buddies. Especially if you have a guy that's more advanced than you and he's willing to spend the time and he's out there recreationally flying with you anyways. So if you know somebody that does this, take advantage of it. If you don't know anybody that does it, maybe run the idea by your instructor and say, hey, what about some advanced skills enhancement training for me? That's kind of what I would do, and try to get them to tailor a couple hours of supervision for your flying, even if you think that you're at the upper end of intermediate paramotoring. I hope to explore a couple different areas, and like I said, I've enlisted the help of some really, really seasoned pilots that undoubtedly have the respect of almost everybody in the paramotor